Maria and Alan have asked me to talk about a lot of the things that are kind of basic to the independent living movement in terms of what's it all about, where did it come from, and who are some of the players, and given all the experiences I had, how does that boil down to what it means and what it means to you too, how you can get a handle on that. All of the insights and renditions of history that you will hear are my own renditions. They're not somebody else's renditions or opinions. They're my opinions based on what I learned. And I have had the opportunity to sit with a lot of different players around the country and listen to what they had to teach. And I advise you to do that as much as you can too. Listen to other people who've been around and come up with your own opinion. You don't necessarily buy into anyone or believe everything anybody tells you, even when you're sitting with somebody who's supposed to be one of the big shots in the independent living movement. So you just kind of take it all in, hash it through in your head, and figure out what makes sense to you, what feels right, what gets corroborated. But I would encourage you to get your own opinion on any of the subjects that I would talk about, or any of the subjects you would hear from anybody that says that they know something in independent living. Because that is what one of the basics is because information is power. We're giving you information, but we encourage you to use that and grind away at that information, test it in your own way, and come up with your own opinions. That's what's the empowerment. So anything I say, whether it's if I tell you who the big shots are and what they did and how they did it, take it with a grain of salt. It's my opinion. That's what I saw. That's what I heard. And somebody else is going to tell you something different. The one thing I did learn in talking to all these folks and observing all this history that I've had the opportunity to sit and watch is all your leaders have feet of clay. Every damn one of them have feet of clay, which means they have some really good things to offer, and they got some shortcomings too. They didn't do everything by the book, but that just proves that you're human, and everybody's human, and you're not perfect. I'm not perfect. We all got something to add. We bring it to the table. We press our point of view. We share our opinion, and sometimes we're wrong. Sometimes we make the wrong choice. Sometimes we give people the wrong advice. But we're in it together, and we're going to sort it out. So I just want you to, I just want to frame everything I say in that context. I might be wrong. I got feet of clay too. I've got some opinions that there are 10 other of my peers who tell you I'm totally wrong. So that's where it goes. So I think this is a great idea that you have these workshops, and you can have an opportunity to hear what this one speaker's opinion is. So what you're going to hear is from Kathleen Kleinmann. Okay, one of the things that Marie asked me to talk about was the history of the independent living movement. Now, I wasn't there when it all got started, but from what I hear and what I have, kind of eked out, the people with disabilities really felt they were getting a raw deal from all the human service organizations that were designed to provide services or assistances to them. And the ones who were getting the worst end of the stick were the people with the most severe disabilities. The ones that are easy to give up on, because they have speech problems, they got hearing problems, they got mobility issues that really they got education issues. That's a big one. That really put them at a disadvantage, and the professionals and the helping systems kind of, put them to the bottom of the pile because they were tough to work with, and they always skimmed the top and helped the folks who look the most quote unquote normal. The ones who were easy to fix and then plug in. And that's where the independent living movement started, and I think that is important to not lose sight of. This is for the folks for whom the system disappointed and failed. This is the anger and the frustration when you went to the VR office, the welfare office, or or the Social Security office, and realized the little bit and pieces that they had to offer didn't fit you, didn't work for you, and if anything, they wanted to push you out the door because they had somebody else they thought was easier to fix. And so all these angry people got together and said, no more. And they started doing things on a legislative point of view, and they started expressing their anger and their discontent. And that was the seeding of the independent living movement. It wasn't, let's go in there and fix everything and make it nice for us and congratulate ourselves that this all works. It was the stimulation of the frustration and the anger against the system that didn't work. That was the root of it. It's, you may have heard the story of, probably a lot of you have, Ed Roberts and, the guys out in Oakland, California. VR told this guy, Ed Roberts, who uses a ventilator, uses a prone cart, and drove his wheelchair with his mouth, or his hand, I think, too. But all these, they told him he couldn't go to college. Well, he found a way to do it. They told him he could never get a job. Well, he found a way to do it. And in the end, you may know the story, he became the head of the VR agency in the state of California before it was all said and done. And he decided to turn it all on its ear. And one of the things that he pushed for and his supporters pushed for was a pot of money for the folks who had been ripped off and had sifted out of the VR system. And that became the money that started independent living centers. So, this was the pot of money they gave to the folks who said, we're angry, the system don't work for us, give us a means to help ourselves. So the independent living centers are supposed to be local organizations of people who come together, who have some level of dissatisfaction, who deal with some of the more basic issues, like housing, personal care services, and some of the issues that haven't been dealt with by some of the known organizations like VR, and start dealing with some of the basics of everyday living, and putting people in a better position to access those services that were supposed to be there for people with disabilities. Now these services, we're talking 30 years now, we're 30 years down the road, they still don't work. They still find a way to push a lot of people out and not provide the tools that those individuals need. So there's still a need for independent living centers. There's still a lot of issues that need to be dealt with. Now, one of the more recent trends in independent living is to dig even deeper to the ones who have even more been shut out of any system. And those are the folks who are in institutions, primarily nursing homes. Because for those folks, they've slammed the door, they've tucked them away, and they're really done with those guys. If you end up in a nursing home, the system probably has said it's done trying. Those individuals are just too hard to work with. They ain't going nowhere anyway, and they shut the door. And since independent living centers are sitting in these communities, they recognize that those folks are lost in that system, that the system itself is not going to do much to get them out. So it is the independent living centers who are going to have to spark that initiative to free people. And that's just one of the populations that centers work with. There are other folks, you know, in other disabilities, but that group kind of stands out as the latest initiative of what centers for independent living really need to get after. Some centers are doing a lot of it. Some centers have been trying real hard not to get involved in getting people out of institutions, not to get involved in nursing homes. But recent additions to the regulations that and the law that governs independent living centers are making that a mandated part of the mission of all the federally funded centers. And that came about as a result of advocates. It came about as a result of people saying the centers should be doing that. But I just wanted to point out that centers for independent living are still evolving. They're still but they're still very, very tied to their community. And when I say tied to their community, I mean the local control. The money that comes down from RSA or from even your state, the decisions on what initiatives, what emphases, what priorities you guys are dealing with come from your local community. What's important to you? What causes you the most frustration? What is standing in the way of the empowerment and the full access to your community and to the opportunities of being an American citizen? What items are standing in the way most to you? And that's what a center needs to identify first, come up with a strategy second, and get to work third. That's, like I said, my point of view. But that's kind of where they came from. They came from the anger. They came from the people who were not served by traditional services. And in that sense, they need to continue to seek out people who have been left out, who have not been served, who have been frustrated and have some anger, and then this is the best part, being a meeting place for getting those people together, and then putting it at their disposal, with their help, the tools that they need to take those issues another step further in resolution. And what I'm trying to say, I'll make it even more clear, that means they don't do it for you. When you come to a center for independent living with a problem, whether it's housing, whether it's transportation, whether it's getting out of your parents' home and getting on your own, the one thing they're not going to do is take that problem from you and solve it for you. That you won't see that happen, or it shouldn't happen. Nobody can take your problems from you. Nobody can solve your issues for you. All they can do is help you to get in touch with other people who have the same issues you have or have had them in the past, and help you together, you guys figure it out. What do I got to do to fix this? What do I got to do? How did you do it? How did you do it? You know, how did anybody, you know, get housing, get assistance? And if you find enough of you that said, there was no resolution to this problem, I never solved it, you get those guys together, and you come up with a plan. Okay, now we got 10 of us who have the same problem, nobody's dealing with it, we're going to make them deal with it. And that's where all this advocacy comes in. By the way, I'll get to, how about if I tell you about the core services? You know, I don't want to skip over nothing. The 4 core services. The course, you know, in the law, when they passed the law and they gave the money, they had to describe what they were doing, and they couldn't actually say what I just said. They had to make it measurable. So they used the kind of the VR framework and say, okay, what do centers do? Well, okay, let's some of the, and they asked some of the leadership, what do centers do? What could they do? Peer support, that's a service. Information and referral, that's a service. Skills training, that's a service. That's real definable. Okay, let's get wild here and say advocacy. That's a service. And let's say enhancing people to take advantage of their communities. That's the newest one. Bringing the people out of nursing home, in other words. That's a service. Well, when they explained it like that, it made it sound like 4 or 5 different services. It's not. It's all the same service. It's very difficult to do one without the other. It's very hard to do peer support without giving people information and referral, without teaching people a skill.